Reincarnation, is reincarnation a fact? Yes, but
The Buddha's core teaching is to stop or break the cycle of rebirth. The term rebirth is being now used alternatively with the term reincarnation. But in Eastern philosophy, the reincarnation is always referred to as taking a birth again and again in the human form rather than again as an animal or bird or any other living beings. In Buddha's teaching, the rebirth is the latter, which means you can be reborn as an animal or a bird or any other living being. So, for the cause for this cycle of rebirth, according to Buddha, is your craving or your compulsion to yourself, the self that is being created through your thoughts and your craving to your concept and your attachment to those accumulated series of thoughts and concepts. It is like you are rolling a snowball from the top of the mountain, and while it is being rolled, it get accumulated with more snow and get it bigger and bigger and bigger. So when you have your when you have the compulsion to your thoughts and your mind, it's get bigger and bigger, and you keep on identifying yourself as a self image and continues with that. The remedy or to stop this continuous cycle of rebirth, according to Buddha, is to let go of that craving. Like you stop the snowball, and if you let go of that craving, that snowball will melt it away. So that's the end of rebirth, and in Buddha's term, end of the samsara, which is the cycle of rebirth. And I found that Eckhart Tolle is echoing the same principle and nicely explaining it. So I just wanted to follow on with his explanation and give some commentaries to connect the dot between Buddha's teaching and Eckhart's experiential explanation. This is a clip from Eckhart's Q&A session, and his replying to one of the question came up during that session.
reincarnation, is reincarnation a fact? Yes, but it's much. I would like to bring reincarnation into something that you can actually experience at first hand here and now. The deeper meaning of reincarnation, as I see it, is you identify with form, then you reincarnate. Carnate comes from flesh.
Yeah, I like with straight away confirm that reincarnation is a fact. And then finally, it's just identified that reincarnation comes because of we identify with the form. This is what Buddha mentioned as well. In the form or the name and form is like, your body and mind, but the notion of your body and mind, once you identified with that, you become a person and a human, and then you will be reborn as long as you keep that identification intact, or if you cling to that identification, you will be continuously reborn. That's what Eckhart was saying here. So that's the connection I can bridge with Buddha's teaching.
Flesh means form. Carnate, chili con carne, it's flesh. It's so you reincarnate, which means you identify with form. Then you reincarnate into a form. So the Buddha.
So it's again that confirming the same thing. So we can hear from even Eckhart referring this is the concept that Buddha taught.
Buddhists striving towards the end of reincarnation so that you no longer are compelled, the consciousness that you are is no longer compelled to reincarnate into another form and have to go through another lifetime of problems. And so
here I want to introduce that another word Buddha used for this particular concept that Eckhart is bringing up. But Eckhart says that you are compelled to be reborn, in the sense that in Buddha's term, to my mind, what Buddha mentioned was this as attachment, or the cause for this rebirth or becoming is your tanha. In other words, your craving or your attachment to the mind and body that you perceive as yourself. In Buddha's term, the mind is created in three different elements. One is chitta, which is thought, and the next one is manasikara, which is conceptual thinking or conceptualization, and the third one is called vijnana, translated as consciousness sometime, but it is actually more need to be translated as a mind. You are compelled to attach to the name and form because of that. That's the cause. And then the result is that really you will be reborn. And the cycle of reborn will continue. In the cycle of reborn, of course, in Buddha's term, we refer to as samsara. So you are reborn and reborn.
Suffering. So the Buddhists are striving, they want to come to the end of this cycle of reincarnation, where perhaps you are conscious enough to choose whether you want to reincarnate or not. You can say, no, I've had enough, thank you.
That is the Buddha's teaching in a nutshell. Eckhart is saying that really, of course, Buddhists are strives to stop this cycle of rebirth. That is what Buddha's main teaching. And when Eckhart is talking about it, and he has nicely, clearly mentioned it, of course, this is the Buddha's teaching.
Reincarnation is identification with form. How do I go beyond reincarnation? You have to do that here and now. And that means that is what we are doing here.
This is what I like Eckhart teaching, and then that is how it's resembled with Buddha's teaching as well, because here the Eckhart is talking about this here and now, right away. You have to do, as Buddha mentioned, that appamado amatapadang, in the sense they don't delay even a second of your valuable time, try it right now and then liberate from this cycle of rebirth.
Do not identify with thought forms in your head. That is the most basic reincarnation that happens continually to you.
In this particular term, Buddha mentioned it as Chitto Vimukti. That means Chitto Vimukti means Chitto is actually your thoughts and your concept, and Vimukti means actually you are liberate from that Chitto. So here that Eckhart is beautifully explaining what is actually Chitto means. Now, first he mentioned that really the basic thing is that really you are identified with your thoughts. That's the first part of that word Chitto. If you define the word Chitto, there are two different parts in there. One is, of course, the thought, and then identify the thought and identifying with that. And the other part is that really your compulsion or your urge or your clinging into those thoughts. So both together we call chitto, in the sense that really you are craving or you are clinging into your thoughts and your concept. So that is what now Eckhart is explaining. So he
Human beings is the complete identification with every thought form that comes into their heads, and then they become it. That's how it is. Let me tell you how. You can see how completely identified they are with thought. So the consciousness.
When Eckhart enact how you react when you identify with your thoughts, the word comes to my mind is when Buddha mentioned that really sabbe putakjana ummattaka, in the sense that really all mundane people are mad or insane. And so it is very interesting. That's why I like Eckhart's explanation. He just bring it into your doorstep, like, it's bringing to you directly, and you can feel it. You can feel what it is happening. And then this is the typical example of, and then this is why the Eckhart's teaching is so popular. So the first part that really has Eckhart mentioned, it is that you are identified with your thoughts and your concept, and then you act like a mad person. And if anybody is familiar with Eckhart's teaching, he always refers to as any normal person. Yeah, actually working on normalize unconsciousness, because Eckhart vocabulary, his term consciousness mean the actual ultimate awareness rather than just a conscious. So this is what is being displayed here. So
Completely drawn into the form, the consciousness that they are, the consciousness that you are, is completely drawn into form. It doesn't.
here that again, that when he mentioned about consciousness, this is not the consciousness that generally people living a normal life, conventional life. So that is not Eckhart interpretation of consciousness. Consciousness is really your true nature. So that is what bringing out, in the sense that your awareness is being drawn into this thoughts and concept. Once you totally identify with that, you become a person, you become individual, and you become or you create your own self, individuality. As Buddha mentioned, it's with your compulsion or your tanha, you actually bring it up. You identify with your thoughts and forms, or your name and form, or nama rupa. So you completely identify with that, and you become a separate person. And as long as you are continuing to do that during this life, and even after this life, as Eckhart mentioned, that once your body dissolves, it will continue into the next life. So perfectly put here by Eckhart.
But if you have gone beyond the compulsion to reincarnate in this lifetime, which means identify with every thought and every emotion that comes up, when you have recognized the essence of who you are beyond form, that realization does not leave you. You are, when you die, there is a freedom that comes because.
See now here, Eckhart going a little further and giving the explanation that Buddha mentioned as once you identified with your thought in Buddha's term, actually he mentioned Chitto Vimukti. That means Chitta is actually your thoughts, mind, and mind concepts. And when you let go of that, you will be liberated. That is what Eckhart iterated by saying that really you can stop it right away, right now.
But the freedom you have already found in this lifetime, because you have died to this identification with form.
It's a good word that Eckhart used. You died from the, who are not identified with your name and form. And if it's actually a prince, Siddhartha, but once he enlightened, Buddha didn't mention his name as Siddhartha. He always referred to him as Tathagata. So that means that really a person who was identified with that no name and form has died, and the new entity is called Tathagata or the Buddha. That is what the differentiation. The same thing is been repeated here when Eckhart said that really you will die once you disengage with your identification as a person or identification with your thoughts and form. And if you stop that your compulsion of attaching to the thoughts and concept. The best part of it is that when Eckhart said that once you recognize your true nature, that will stay with you and it does not change anymore, which is really, he's talking about experience of non-self that Buddha mentioned. So if you have that experience of non-self within this lifetime, that will stay with you forever. That is why you will be not born again. So in fact, this Eckhart's answer to that question is impeccably in line with Buddha's teaching. Eckhart is echoing Buddha's teaching.